Hey folks, back with another video. Let's dive into what stories caught my attention this week. Starting with the Australia China relations, which have taken a nosedive this week. Now, Beijing authorities have formally arrested Cheng Lei, an Australian news reporter, over espionage. Now, bear in mind that she was taken into custody in August of 2020. Australian and Chinese Foreign Ministry confirmed her arrest, and the Australian Foreign Minister Marise Payne said that the officials had visited her 6 times during her detention. And that's not all the news that came from China. In the World Health Organization recently sent a team to China to find the source of the virus, but it ended without finding the source. Now, the important thing in that whole saga is the fact that the experts relied on analysis by Chinese scientists and not raw data. Now, that fact alone will be used by the people who are against the World Health Organization, and it leads credence to the fact that the World Health Organization has taken the knee to the Chinese Communist Party. Something, I mean, they're gonna have to make a good case that they have not, but all the indications are that they have. Now, in a separate story with respect to China, is that Japan is now considering options to deal with China's new aggressive Coast Guard law. Now, Japan is one of the options that it is considering is it is trying to streamline their navy and their police in the islands to work together without with giving them more authorities. Now there are many other as well, but if there's any other development on this, I will keep you guys up to date. Whereas the United States conducted two Navy drills in South China Sea with its two aircraft. Let me repeat that. The U.S. conducted a Navy drill with two U.S. aircraft carriers, namely Theodore Roosevelt and Nimitz, in South China Sea. Of course, this escalates the probability of a conflict. Now, I don't want anything that would increase the risk of conflict, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be doing things to build a credible threat. But I don't think this is more of a credible threat as it is more of a, we could say, a little, how should we say, in the most diplomatic way, it could spark a international crisis. Let's just put it that way. On a separate news, it seems that the Chinese authorities have banned BBC in retaliation of what the British have done with respect to CGTN, which is a Chinese news broadcasting channel. And again, both countries have their own prerogatives, but of course, this doesn't diminish my opinion on the Chinese of being a tyrannical government. Now, a little positive news on China is that the Chinese Tianwen-1 probe has entered the orbit of planet Mars. Now, I will continue to look into this particular story as well as other stories with respect to China to report to you guys what has happened. And so far, I think this week, on the whole, it has been a bad week for China. On the whole, again. But I will continue to look into them and see whatever developments happen. Now, moving on into our next story is Myanmar. Now, it seems that the protests have continued to happen across the country and they have been growing. Now, in the earlier part of the week, it came out that 4 people were hurt, with one woman in critical condition, and more than 350 people were arrested during the week, it seems. And it started with the earlier part of the week where 20 to 30 were detained in Mandalay. And it seems as a result of these increased arrests, the neighbors are now banding together to stop any arrests from happening in their neighborhoods, which, in my opinion, is a good thing. I think the neighbors are doing their small bit in fighting the tyranny, and I support them in this endeavor. And I hope the international community recognizes this, and I'm assuming that all freedom loving people will commend these neighbors for sticking by with their people. Now, as a response, the Myanmar government has imposed martial law in large cities across the country. Now, as per these martial law, the regime has banned the gathering of more than 5 people. Now, General Min Aung Hlaing has, on his first televised address, reiterated the allegations of election fraud and a promise to hold a new election in a year's time. Now, that is not all from Myanmar. It seems that a story has broken out that the military held negotiations before the coup, and it seems that the break. It was because the negotiations didn't go as the military planned that they went for the coup. Now, the Assistance Association for Political Prisoners have said that 165 people have been detained, of which only 13 were released. In a separate but with respect to Myanmar, it seems that the European countries have called for a special session of the UN Human Rights Council on Myanmar, and the US, UN, and other Western countries have condemned the violence in the country. Now, I wish the Myanmar people all the luck, and I think in about a week or two we can get a clearer picture of what's going to be in the future for Myanmar. Would it be a democratic government will rise out of this, or will the military take a hold? And as of yet, it seems that the military will continue to hold on to power. Moving on into our next story is an update on the India's glacier avalanche. Now, the update is that so far 18 people have died, whereas 204 people are missing. Now, these missing people are in the Tapavan Vishnugarh hydroelectric project and the smaller dam at Rishiganga. And these missing people, most of them are trapped inside tunnels by these that are part of these projects. Now, I wish the authorities all the success in finding each and every one of these missing people, and hopefully they are alive. But any update I will continue to keep in my future videos. However, so far 32 bodies have been retrieved in the operations. Moving into a separate news that was in India was that Twitter has suspended accounts upon the request by the Indian government. But of course, the Indian government was not satisfied by Twitter's action, as Twitter did not ban the 1,100 accounts that it requested Twitter to suspend. Of course, Twitter has responded that it was following the Indian law. So I think in the coming days and weeks, we're going to see how Twitter is going to deal with the Indian government. It's going to be interesting, to say the least. And yeah, moving on into our next story is Afghanistan, where it was a complete chaos. Now, Afghanistan's defense ministry said on Friday it conducted operation in Arghabat, Kandahar, where it says that 18 Taliban terrorists were killed and 9 other wounded. However, there was explosion in Chapadara district in which 4 local police personnel were killed, including their commander. Now, 7 police personnel were injured in a blast at a police outpost in Kandahar. And in a third incident, a roadside bomb injured 3 civilians in Jalalabad, Nangarhar district. Now, it seems that the terrorists in Afghanistan are getting desperate as they continue a increased, let's just say, an increase of these violent attacks across the country. And if this continues along with the U.S. policy that is that the U.S. is being pushed to accept, I think the war in Afghanistan is going to continue for much longer. Anyhow, moving on into our next story is the US-Iran relations. Now, relations as of yet are officially at a stalemate. However, US is considering a baby steps to revive the Iran deal. Now, in these baby steps, the US would reduce sanctions while Iran would roll back its nuclear program in small steps to, I would assume, build some kind of trust. Now, Iran's intelligence minister Mahmoud Alavi had said that any move towards Iran acquiring nuclear weapons would be the fault of US. However, the Qatari foreign minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani has said that Qatar is working to de-escalate and get the US get back on the Iran deal. Now, I think the Iran deal overall is a good deal, and once the US and Iran has a deal, they can then work towards working on other contentious issues, because an unstable Iran isn't just unstable Iran, it is an unstable all of Middle East will become unstable. Anyhow, moving on into our next story is, of course, the US Special Envoy for Yemen, Timothy Landerking, who has taken a trip to Saudi Arabia. Now, his mission is a diplomatic resolution to the Yemen war. Now, I welcome this and I wish him all the success. Now, Timothy Landerking has met with President Abdurabu Mansour Hadi, who is the president of Yemen, the internationally recognized government, as well as the foreign minister Ahmed bin Mubarak of the Yemen. While Secretary of State Anthony Blinken met with Saudi Foreign Minister Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud, and the Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has said that Houthis will their designation as terrorist will be revoked on the 16th of February. Now, all in all, I think both the de-escalation and hopefully an actual diplomatic resolution to the Yemen war is something within the grasp. I think the Biden administration, if this particular move by the Biden administration, I fully support. There has to be other ways to deal with problems, and hopefully Biden will be successful. Fingers crossed. Moving on into our next story is in Israel. Now, it seems that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel did briefly appear in Jerusalem's district court and formally rejected the corruption charges. The corruption charges included bribery, fraud, and breach of trust. And after that, he left the court, leaving his lawyer Boaz Ben Zur to argue on his behalf, and he argued on the procedural aspects of the investigation. Now, whatever happens, the case in and of itself is going to be interesting and fascinating, both for Israel and also for just justice, just for justice. Anyhow, moving on into our next story is Turkey. Taking a look at the student protests, it seems that more than 250 student protesters were arrested in this week. Now, it seems that the protesters have started using social media apps to engage in activism. Now, as far as protests go, I'm in full support of the protesters to assemble and in any way to register their protest against any decision the government takes. Now, on a separate story, the Turkish Defense Minister Hulusi Akar has said that Turkey could use the S-400 defense system partially. This is a story that I did cover in last year when they acquired the S-400 defense system. Now, the Turkish defense minister pointed to following the model set by the Greeks who have the S-300 installed in Crete. And they could hopefully use this as for the defense system. And over the years, it seems that NATO has become very averse to Russia, and it is part of that sort of aversion, and that aversion has created a bit of fear in them that the S-400 could compromise their own broader defense of the region. Whatever the cause, whatever the reason, we'll find out what happens. Moving on into our next story is Ethiopia. Now, I talked about how the war in the Tigray region would have impacts after the war, and as of yet, it seems that we are now getting a bit of the understanding of what these are. So far, it seems that 80% of Tigray's 6 million people still are unreachable, according to Red Cross, despite the fact that the war is over and it has been months. Now, Ethiopian government has also shut down 2 refugee camps and is in the midst of relocating the occupants. Now, there were also attacks on refugee camps in Ethiopia and the Tigray region. The 2 camps are the Shemelba and the Hetsats. Now, there is also allegations that the Eritrean troops were involved in the attack. I personally, I find it, let's just say, quite strange that Tigray region, which was in war recently, had refugee camps for Eritrean people. It's just strange. Anyhow, moving on into our next story is from Russia. Now, a little further development has taken with respect to Alexei Navalny, who appeared in court on charges of slander. Navalny accused people in a video that promoted constitutional reforms which gave President Putin the right to be president again as traitors and corrupt lackeys. Now, amongst the video there was a World War II veteran, and it seems that the veteran's nephew just requested that Navalny just apologize, which he refused. Now, all that aside, it seems that the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has said that Russia was ready to sever ties with the EU. Of course, this comes because the whole situation with Alexei Navalny has pushed the Western countries to be even more harsh on Russia. Now, it could be that Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov is showing strength while he's in a weak position. Whatever the reason, I just hope that we can find a way to work with Russia. Russia is not as bad of a is not as bad of a country to work with as China is, and I think we have an opportunity to uh, work with Russia in a way to contain China. Anyhow, moving on to our next story is the development in Rome. Mario Draghi was sworn in as the new Prime Minister of Italy. Now, all but one political party, namely the Fratelli d'Italia, support the new government. Now, here is the information I got on the cabinet composition. It seems there will be 8 ministries which will be under a technocrat, whereas 4 ministries will be under the will be ministers will be chosen by the five-star movement. There will be 3 ministries each for the Democratic Party, the League, and the Forza Italia, and 1 ministry each for Italia Viva and the LEU party. Now, personally, I wish the Italian people all the luck. I think Italian people are going to be in for a very rough time. But that is not over. Mario Draghi's government has to win a vote of no confidence both in the lower and the upper house. So I guess there's going to be some more news from Italy coming in the future. Moving on into the world of finance. It seems the market is just going a little bit too hot. Anyhow, Tesla has acquired roughly 1.5 billion US dollars worth in Bitcoin. Tesla has announced plans to use Bitcoin as payment in the future. Obviously, this kind of news definitely would have had impact on Bitcoin, and boy did it. Bitcoin hit its value at 47,000 US dollars. Now, obviously these prices are going up rapidly, and again, this has all of this goes down to the fact on how the US government and specifically the Treasury and their Federal Reserve, their policy and their recent action has basically pushed the stock market to go into a complete frenzy. Speaking of frenzy, it seems that the GameStop saga hasn't quite ended. Well, Robinhood, Citadel, Melvin Capital, and Reddit CEOs will testify. They will testify before the U.S. House Financial Services Committee on February 18. Now, my personal view, it's going to be a lot of grandstanding, lots of speeches, but very little actual action. Because, as I said just right now, the real fault lies with the Federal Reserve and the Treasury. If the and of course the U.S. House of Representative, in fact, the whole Congress, is also to blame for all this, as they are the ones who really caused this situation to go this badly. Anyhow, that's it for this video. If you like the video, then hit that like button and hit that subscribe button for future updates. Write in the comment sections your thoughts, criticisms, and anything I might have missed. And I will see you in the next video.